back to the Purple and Gold podcast. It's been a minute since I've made a video. Last video that I uploaded was Mock Draft 2.0, and by the way, thank you all for the support on that video. This is the most viewed video that I've had on the channel, and I've been uploading videos for the past year or so. But we're almost at 3,000 views on that video, so hopefully we're trending in the right direction. We are on the road to 300 subscribers, so do whatever you guys can to support the channel. If you'd like, leave the like. Put something in the comment section. It's always good to interact with everyone. And most importantly, subscribe. It's free and you can always change your mind later. So, yeah, without further ado, we're going to get straight into Mock Draft 3.0. The big reason why I decided to make another mock draft is because the Philadelphia Eagles and the New Orleans Saints made a huge blockbuster trade where the Saints acquire another first-round pick in this year's draft, but Philadelphia, gets a couple of picks later on in this draft. They get a first next year, and they get a second the year after. So, in my opinion, we still have to see what these players end up being, but it looks like Philadelphia has won the trade at the moment. I'm not really sure what the plan is for the Saints, but I'm going to do a little bit of foreshadowing for my own mock draft. I do think that they did trade up for another first-round pick in order to get their future franchise quarterback, meaning that they're not completely sold on Jameson Williams, and neither am I. So, without further ado, let's get straight into this thing. I'm gonna move quickly through the obvious picks. The first one being Aiden Hutchinson out of Michigan. This is gonna be a franchise edge rusher. I know that the big comparison for him is Nick Bosa, Joey Bosa. They have a similar build, they have a similar play style, and also similar production. So, Aiden Hutchinson would be a home run pick for the Jaguars. Sorry about that. Now, coming up next is the Detroit Lions. Now, this one is not as obvious, and if it was my choice, I wouldn't be going with this guy. I feel like he's one of the most overhyped players currently in the draft, and that's going to be Travond Walker. Now, just because I think he's overhyped, overrated, does not mean that I think he is bad. I just don't think that Travond Walker is worthy of being a top 5 pick, but the way that it sounds right now by NFL, analysts and guys who have connections to, the inner parts of the league, it sounds like Travond Walker is getting a ton of hype, after what he's done recently in the offseason program, or the draft process, I should say. So I have him listed as a first-round talent. I just don't believe that he should be going within the top 5, but good player nonetheless. Again, huge question marks with Kayvon Thibodeaux at the moment, so it wouldn't be surprising to me if Travond Walker does end up going number 2. And because of those question marks, I think the Texans are going to pass up on him here, and they're going to go with Evan Neal here. This is the guy that's been going first in a majority of the mock drafts so far, and just the pure size that he possesses right now is just, it's ideal for a tackle, and you can pair him up with Laremy Tunsil. He has experience at right tackle, so if you don't want to move Tunsil to right, keep him at left, have Neal play right. It's totally possible. The guy's played multiple positions at Alabama, so there's no reason why he can't do the same here in the NFL. We're going to continue the trend now with tackles, and this time it's going to be Mckay Bechten out of NC State. I believe that this is the guy with the highest ceiling at the moment for the tackles, and really he has one of the highest ceilings in this entire draft class. I really love Mckay Bechten. I have him as my number 1 tackle in this year's draft class, but this is a really nasty offensive lineman. I think he's up there with, Trevor Penn for the guys who, make the most aggressive plays at the tackle spot. But again, this is another team that already has one good staple tackle on one side. You add another, right? And for this team, it's Mckay Bechten, who was hurt for a majority of last season, but I think he'll be okay. And whether you want to move him or Ekwonu to right tackle, I think either of those guys would have a smooth transition to the opposite side of the offensive line. Make it an emphasis to protect your franchise quarterback in Zach Wilson. We're going to do the same here in protecting Daniel Jones, and we're going to take Charles Cross out of Mississippi State. This guy, I think, is one of the most solid prospects in the entire draft. I really like Charles Cross, and really for him to be the 3rd offensive lineman taken is no slump to him. Really, in other draft classes, it's possible that Charles Cross could have been the first offensive tackle taken. It's just that this class is very top heavy, has a ton of depth, and if Charles Cross is to fall into the lap of the New York Giants at number 5, I think that that would just be an absolute home run pick for them. Just a completely solid guy. And this is another team. They have their left tackle set in Andrew Thomas. Move Charles Cross over to right. So a lot of these guys, maybe they end up staying at left tackle and make the guy who's currently there move to the right. But either way, right? All of these teams are going to have pillars on both sides of the offensive line, and they all have very young quarterbacks. So I think it's just a plus, plus, and plus for all of these teams to go out there and protect their quarterback, give them some time to throw, and most importantly, keep them healthy for the long run. For the Carolina Panthers now, I mean, this is a spot where I would have considered taking an offensive lineman had there been one that we liked, but I think they're going to go with a quarterback here in this situation. I think Kenny Pickett. Right now, this team has a defense that's ready to win right now. And if we're looking at the most pro-ready quarterback, which is a term that I don't like to use when talking about draft prospects, but that is a term that is heavily connected with Kenny Pickett. I think this makes the most sense, and this guy gives them the best opportunity to win now. Unlike guys like Malik Willis, Desmond Ridder, Matt Corral, those guys are a little bit more developmental. I think you have to give them a year, maybe half the year, until they can finally play and make their mark on the league. But Kenny Pickett, I think, is a guy who I think most teams think you can just plug in and play, especially in a situation like Carolina where they're not really sold on Sam Darnold at the moment. So I think this pick makes a ton of sense. It might not be Pickett, it might be Willis. I'm not really sure, but my gut is telling me Kenny Pickett. So we'll move on from that. Right here, this is going to be my first real shakeup of the draft. Right here, I'm going to take Ahmad Gardner out of Cincinnati. There have been reports coming out that the Giants and the Jets are very high on Ahmad Gardner, and really, I don't know who isn't at this point. I mean, I wouldn't be shocked if he goes in the top 5, if I'm being completely honest. But my gut is telling me that he's going to go to 7 here at the Giants. I think this would just be a home run of a pick. Again, there's going to be a lot of these picks where I'm going to say, oh, this is great value. This is great value. And it just comes to show how much depth there is in this year's draft. Ahmad Gardner is another exception to that. This is cornerback 1A, 1B for some people. It's really tough for them to decide, between Gardner and Stingley. Now, for me, Gardner's been more productive as of late, and he's also been on the field. His availability is a huge key to why I have him as my number 1 corner this year, and I think other teams do as well. Derek Stingley, though, I think has a higher ceiling. He's played against better competition, and he's produced at an extremely high level at some point in his career. Again, it's about availability that I think is going to scare some of these teams from taking him if they are looking to take a corner in this year's draft. That's why I think Gardner is going to go first. But really, again, this is another situation where it's either this guy or the other, and I really wouldn't be shocked. So, man, just talking about this draft every single time I do a mock draft just gets me excited. If it was up to me and we could add more picks to the first round, I would definitely do it because I think that there are more than 32 first round picks or first round talented players in this year's draft. So, all right, enough with the rant. We're going to go here to the Falcons now. At this point, this is just way too much value to pass up on, and this also fills a need at the moment too. But if Kayvon Thibodeaux is sitting there at 8, I think the Falcons have to snag him. I mean, again, this is a guy that I was talking about potentially going at the number 2 pick. Here in my mock draft, he falls all the way to 8. I think for some people it might be shocking to see this. Others, I think they can understand it, but there's just a lot. It's just a big mixed bag when it comes to the opinion on Kayvon Thibodeaux recently. So I don't know. I think that mixed bag is gonna stick around all the way until draft night, and if he falls to number 8, like I said, I wouldn't be the slightest bit shocked. Here for the Seattle Seahawks, this is one that I really thought about because looking at the top 3 guys on the board, obviously they need a quarterback in Malik Willis because I don't think Drew Lock is a guy. Look, Drew Lock has had about, I would say, a year and a half total of games played to prove himself, and he just hasn't gotten the job done. So, really, I don't think there's anything more we need to see from Drew Lock to say, hey, maybe he can be our franchise quarterback. Drew Lock is not a franchise quarterback, and maybe it's a little bit of my bias kicking in, but even when he came into the draft in 2019, I wasn't very high on him. I didn't think that he was that great of a prospect, and he's done nothing so far for him to change my mind. Um, but the only debate that I had with myself was that, hey, Kyle Hamilton is a great prospect who's dropping, recently, because people had him as listed as a generational talent. Now, not so much, and understandably so. I think at the end of the day, though, right, you just want to bring good players into the building, and Kyle Hamilton is an exception to that. Same goes for Jermaine Johnson. All three of these guys would be tremendous value at the pick. But at the end of the day, if there's a quarterback that you want, you got to take him. That's why I'm going to take Malik Willis. And I also think he kind of fits, what the Seahawks have had at quarterback, for the past 10 years in Russell Wilson, just a guy who has, incredible mobility, the ability to extend the play, and just has a strong and accurate arm. I mean, if you've ever seen Malik Willis throw on the run, it's probably one of the most impressive things that I've seen out of a QB draft prospect in a very long time. Um, Look, and a lot of people are going to say, well, he played for Liberty, the competition wasn't really there. I don't want to hear it. I mean, you have guys like Josh Allen, who played at Wyoming. Does the Mountain West have good competition? No. So I don't want to hear it. I just think that, Malik Willis is just too talented. And again, this is another guy who I wouldn't be shocked if he got picked in the top 5 by, let's say, the Lions. But if he falls here at 9, like I said, the value, it fills a position of need. And it can also be, just a huge cornerstone piece for the Seattle Seahawks team for the next 10 to 15 years if he ends up panning out. For the New York Jets now, right here, I'm going to give him Derek Stingley. I thought about Jermaine Johnson for a little bit, but taking a look, you have Carl Lawson, who I know isn't great. I know he's not great. And you look at the cornerback spot, and there's no one that's really getting me excited. So I wanted to get Derek Stingley in the building. I just feel like when you compare the two positions at edge and cornerback looks a little more thin than that defensive line. So I wanted to get a little bit of help there in the secondary, and I think Derek Stingley would be a phenomenal pick for this defense. Again, the big question mark with him is, can he stay healthy? But the big exclamation point for a prospect like Derek Stingley is that if he is constantly available, he does find a way to stay on the field, and he produces at the level that everyone expects him to, this could end up being the best player in the draft. That's how high his ceiling is. So Derek Stingley is a very intriguing prospect, and really, if a team is willing to roll the dice on him, and honestly, personally, if I was in that position, I would definitely roll the dice on Derek Stingley. One of the most electrifying defenders in all of college football. So, yeah, really like Derek Stingley. For Washington, this is a very quick and easy pick for me. It's going to be Garrett Wilson. You got to go out and get Carson Wentz some more help. You already have Scary Terry. You add an Ohio State buddy in Garrett Wilson. You play Curtis Samuel in the slot. And then, maybe throw in some packages where De'Ami Brown is on the field at the same time as well. Point being is, I think you need a wide receiver 1 and 2. I don't think that Curtis Samuel is a wide receiver 2. I think he's just purely a slot receiver and nothing more than that, unfortunately. But, Garrett Wilson, I think, is going to be phenomenal. Now, personally, I don't have him as my number 1 wide receiver in this year's class. For me, that's Jameson Williams. But the reason why he's not going to go here at 11 is because he's coming off of that ACL injury. I think teams will be a little bit more hesitant to take him as the first wide receiver off the board. Garrett Wilson is a huge pick right here, a safer one. And this is a guy who's also highly productive at Ohio State, regardless of having a Chris Olave and a Jackson Smith and Jigba on his team as well. So I really like Garrett Wilson. Just has a very fluid route running and is a very strong runner after the catch. I think that's an underrated trait that he possesses. But Garrett Wilson would be a huge compliment to Terry McLaurin in Washington and would be a big help to Carson Wentz. Now here for the Minnesota Vikings, personally, I want the team to draft a corner, and I think it's highly possible that both of the corners in Ahmad Gardner and Derek Stingley are off the board here at 12. But that's okay, because here in our mock draft, that leaves room for Kyle Hamilton. Now, this is just a BPA pick, and BPA meaning best player available, and I think that this would be huge. Vikings don't necessarily need a safety You do have Harrison Smith, who, yes, is aging, but is still very productive. And there's another guy on the team that a lot of people don't know about, but that's Cameron Bynum, who is a fourth-round pick, cornerback converted to safety this past season. And when he was on the field, he made some pretty big plays. I think the most notable one being against the Baltimore Ravens, making a huge diving catch interception on Lamar Jackson. That was one of the most impressive defensive plays that I saw all year from the Minnesota Vikings, considering there weren't very many. But look, if a guy like Kyle Hamilton is sitting there at 12, you can't pass up on him. And there's been a knock on him lately. And it's okay because, look, for one, he's a safety. The position didn't really have the value of being a top 5 pick in the first place. So for him to still go at 12 is a huge accomplishment for him. And what he's already accomplished at Notre Dame can't be unnoticed. The guy is very talented. He might not be the most athletic player on the field, but he's a damn smart one. And you watch the film and it shows because his ability to read plays and just know where the ball is going really kind of makes up for his athleticism at times. Now, it might bite him in the butt come time when he plays in the NFL because the game is just a little bit quicker. But I think mentally he's there, and I think that that's a huge aspect of the game that can't be, you know, undervalued, I should say. So I think Kyle Hamilton here for the Vikings, I think that this would be a huge pick. Kind of feels a need, um, but like I said, BPA is the way to go. For the Texans now, at first, when I went into this, I was like, okay, maybe we can get some help for Davis Mills, because right now you only have Brandon Cooks, who I think is currently being shopped. They're trying to get a second round pick out of him, and then Nico Collins after that. So it's like, okay, if you pick up a Jameson Williams or a Drake London, that would be huge. But if Jermaine Johnson is sitting there at 10, uh, and this is a team that needs a premier edge rusher as well. Um, they lost J.J. Watt, the last off season. You lost Jadeveon Clowney a long time ago, and now there's really no one on the defensive line to really speak about, or that's really notable. I mean, there are some guys on there that are productive. Jonathan Grenard being one of them. Lopez, the defensive tackle, he had a pretty solid season. But Jermaine Johnson, I mean, this is another guy I think could go so much higher. Um, Again, a huge value pick, also fills a need. And look, this position at wide receiver has a ton of depth this season. So if you're the Texans, I think you can snag a guy early in the second round and still be satisfied with that. But knowing that you got out of the first round with Evan Neal and Jermaine Johnson, I think is a huge dub. For the Ravens, this is another one. Now look, they're gonna go best player available. This is a team where I look at their roster and they look set at almost every single position. There are a few holes here and there, but it's nothing crazy where it's like, damn, we need this position like really badly. If you can pick up a Jordan Davis here at 14, I think that would be huge. Uh, no pun intended. But seriously, like this guy is an athletic freak, and just the size and the speed that he runs at, that's not supposed to happen. It really isn't supposed to happen. But hey, Jordan Davis is a real person. He exists. This is like the guy that you build on Madden, who just has ridiculous traits. Um, but like I said, he is real, and this is a team that I think needs a big nose tackle in the middle. They did sign Michael Pierce back onto the team. He was originally a Raven, then signed with the Vikings. Now he's back with the Ravens, but he's just been very injury plagued this past season, opted out from COVID the year before. So there's a huge question mark with Michael Pierce on whether he'll be on the field or not. But really, if you can get Pierce and Davis on the field at the same time, which I'm sure they would do if they ended up drafting him, I think that this would be a huge dub for the Baltimore Ravens. Really, anyone who picks up Jordan Davis, I think, is going to get a really solid player. For the Philadelphia Eagles, so this is, like I said, a big reason why I chose to do a mock draft today was because yesterday the Eagles and the Saints made a huge trade. So this kind of changes, a little bit of what we do. Right now at 15, I know we're going to take a wide receiver right here. This is where Jameson Williams goes. So the first two wide receivers taken off the board are going to pair up with some alumni. Here, Jameson Williams going to pair up with his buddy Devonta Smith. What a lethal duo that could end up being in. Quez Watkins will be there as your wide receiver 3. There's going to be a lot of chemistry here, with Williams, Devontae Smith, and Jalen Hurts at quarterback. I really like, what's going on there. And, with the picks that the Eagles have, setting themselves up for the future, I think they're in a really good spot. I'm not really sold on Jalen Hurts at the moment, um, but that's going to be a discussion for another time. Here for the New Orleans Saints, right here, we're going to go ahead and take a quarterback. I think that's the whole reason why they decided to acquire an extra pick in this draft. We're going to go Matt Corral here at quarterback. I just don't think that they're completely sold on the whole Jameis Winston thing. I think Sean Payton was a huge reason why Winston was able to have the season that he did last year. But now that Sean Payton is gone, I don't think we're going to see the same Jameis Winston. I think it's time that they get a replacement for Drew Brees, and that's going to be Matt Corral in this situation. This would be an absolute dub. I have Matt Corral as my number one quarterback in this year's draft, and really, I think the biggest dub about this entire thing is that, Jameis isn't or wasn't last year bad to the point where like he would lose you games like how he did in Tampa Bay. But right now, I think he's in a good spot to be that bridge quarterback for Corral and allow Corral to be your future franchise quarterback. Next year, maybe even sometime this year, I wouldn't be surprised. This is an easy pick here for me here at 17 for the Chargers. I'm going to go ahead and give him Trevor Penning. I think some people would consider him a project player, but this guy has a ton of upside. Just again, I mentioned this earlier in the video with Ikem Ekwonu, but this guy plays with a ton of aggressiveness, plays with a lot of just nastiness, and he's always putting guys on the ground. He's always throwing them to the ground and doing a pancake, but I did not use that term correctly at all. Holy crap, that is so cringy. Anyway, Trevor Penning, like I said, just a massive human being, knows how to use his weight appropriately, does tend to throw guys on the ground maybe a little more than necessary, but it's all right. Like I said, the nastiness and the aggressiveness is something that you can appreciate out of an offensive lineman. Chargers need an offensive lineman badly. Max Crosby, took over that game during some points at the last game of the season. I always mention this when I talk about the Chargers and them taking Trevor Penning, but it's true. I mean, this is a division, right, where you have like a Bradley Chubb, now a Randy Gregory, Chris Jones, Frank Clark, Max Crosby, now Chris Jones. So building a good offensive line in the AFC West is pivotal for each and every one of these teams to be successful. So Trevor Penning is a step in the right direction. They already have Rashawn Slater on the other side. Here for the Eagles, I'm going to stick with the Trent McDuffie pick that I went with last time. I think they need another corner, to pair up alongside Darius Slay. I think Trent McDuffie would be a huge addition to this team, at least on the defensive side of the ball. And I think it fits the mold of the type of cornerback that I think the Eagles are going to bring in. Their cornerbacks aren't the most lengthy. They aren't the biggest guys. That's Trent McDuffie. I think Andrew Booth is a little bit longer and I think a little bit heavier than Trent McDuffie, which is why I don't think they'll draft him here. So yeah, McDuffie here at 18 I think makes a ton of sense for the Eagles. Here for the New Orleans Saints, I think they're going to go receiver here. For some reason, I can't imagine Drake London or Traylon Burks in a Saints jersey. I really see a fit here with Chris Olave. But again, another wide receiver pairing up with former alumni, Michael Thomas being a member of the Buckeyes, and so does Chris Olave. So we're just pairing them all up today. Chris Olave, a Saint, and whether it's Jameis Winston or Matt Corral, he's going to be highly beneficial to that offense in the years to come. Right here for the Steelers now, I don't think that there's a quarterback that, they really feel comfortable taking here at 20. Again, this is one of those teams where I think they could definitely trade up in the draft, but we're not going to do that here. Every single pick that we're going to do is just a stick and pick, no trading. Again, like I mentioned, this can be a team that is going to trade up. I wouldn't be shocked if they do. But considering the circumstances that we are left with here in this current mock draft, we're going to take Andrew Booth out of Clemson. Really hard to name the corners on this team, and there's really no one notable that it's like, oh yeah, this guy's going to lock up, the other team's wide receiver 1 or wide receiver 2. So, Andrew Booth, I don't think would be able to lock up a bunch of number 1 wide receivers, day one. But I think he has a ton of potential, and this team has some pretty glaring needs, cornerback being one of them. So I think Andrew Booth would be, huge value here. At this point, he's a number 4 corner taken. I think he's number 3, so I think sitting here at 20, if Andrew Booth is there, you turn in the card. For the New England Patriots, this is a team that's going to get another huge value player. This guy could go a lot sooner. I just don't know what teams are currently thinking about the whole positional value of the inside linebacker position. But if Devin Lloyd falls here to 21, man, I mean, he's falling into the hands of the right team, because when it comes to a team that knows how to use their defensive players the right way, it is the New England Patriots. And Devin Lloyd, I mean, if you can bring the best out of this guy, oh man. I mean, he's already scary, and he's not there yet, so. All right. Moving on to the Green Bay Packers. Right here, I really want to give him an offensive lineman, but I just think that if Drake London is sitting there at 22, I think the Packers have to take him. Now, this would be huge for them. This guy is a jump ball, 50-50, go up and get the ball type of guy. I've used this term before. I think he's more of a 75-25 guy, because more likely than not, if you throw the ball up to Drake London, he's going to go and get it. He has a basketball background. So this is just a big body receiver who's just going to go up and make a play. So Drake London, this is a guy who's been talked about as a potential top 10 pick. It could definitely happen. But here in my mock draft, he's going to be sitting here 22, making his way to Green Bay. And Green Bay typically doesn't take wide receivers, let alone offensive players, in the first round. But I think that's going to change this year. I think they've done a great job. I hate to admit it, being a Vikings fan, and I don't want to compliment the Packers, but they have done a great job on the defensive side, and it's left them really no need to draft any defensive players. But, knowing Green Bay, they might use both of these first round picks on defenders, even though they don't need it. So, but Drake London to the Green Bay Packers now. For the Arizona Cardinals, we're going to go ahead and give them George Karlaftis out of Purdue. They lost a monumental piece on the defensive side of the ball in Chandler Jones. And right now you have Marcus Golden as one of your edge rushers. And after that, it's a huge question mark. But George Karlaftis can come in, plug in and play. This is a guy who knows how to use his strength appropriately. He is a bull rushing edge rusher. And really, he's the most unique out of the bunch, in my opinion. I mean, a lot of these guys have a combination of both strength and speed, but Karlaftis just knows how to push a guy back. He knows how to keep the tackles unsettled and, push them straight into their own quarterback. So I think George Karlaftis has a very unique talent and skill set in this year's draft. He's not as versatile as the other guys, which is why he falls down here to 23. But if the Cardinals can find any form of pass rush in this year's draft, and Karlaftis is sitting there at 23, I think this would be a huge pick for them. For the Cowboys at 24, they've already been talking to him on the, through meetings and stuff like that. But if Treylon Burks is there at 24, I think they're going to take them. They've done a great job these past few years of just taking the best player available. You take a look at last year as a huge example in Micah Parsons. A lot of people would say, linebacker wasn't a huge need for the Cowboys at the time, but they took him anyway. And look at what Micah Parsons has become. He was Defensive Player of the Year, and I believe was on the All-Pro team. So that's huge right there. And again, take one of the best players available at the moment in Treylon Burks. And this is a team that just lost Amari Cooper. They love to use, wide receivers in their sets. So you have Burks, you have CeeDee Lamb, and then James Washington, Michael Gallup, right? So those are 4 solid receivers that you can use. They like to air it out. So Treylon Burks, I think, would be a very solid pickup here for the Cowboys here at 24. I'm trying to refrain from using the term huge pick because I've done that so many times already, and I just realized that. You guys probably don't care, and you're just like, move on, so we're going to do that. Kenyan Green sitting here at 25. Look, I got a lot of heat last time for taking Devonta Wyatt, and I was very wrong in doing so. So thank you to Bills Mafia for reaching out to me and telling me, hey, we don't need Devonta Wyatt. This is what we need. And really, I looked at the depth chart and I thought that the offensive line was fine. Obviously, me being a Vikings fan, didn't pay a whole lot of attention to the AFC last season. I really don't in general. I do keep up with the NFL, obviously. But if I had to tell you, I'm focusing on, the NFC playoff run and, who's doing this and that. I don't really hear much from the AFC because I think, you know, as a as the Vikings, you play four AFC teams, I think, every year. So, I didn't get to see that much of the Bills. But when I did, the offensive line didn't look crazy bad. Must have just caught them on the right days. But Kenyan Green fills the need in at guard. I guess Cody Ford is just not doing it for him. So yeah, Kenyan Green there at offensive line. I don't even know what I'm saying anymore. I'm just making up some crap here about the NFC and the AFC stuff. I'm watching football constantly throughout the entire week, so maybe I just didn't see it. I just didn't see it. Um, for the Titans now, I don't know why he's rated so low here on the Draft Network, but Nakobe Dean, I mean, they're talking about how he doesn't have the same athleticism and yada, yada, yada. Look, the dude goes out there and makes plays, and he's a sideline to sideline type guy. He's laying a hit, and he's been pretty solid in coverage too at Georgia. He was the heart and soul of the defense. I mean, he was the man in the middle, and he made plays when it was, thrown his way, when it was run his way. So, Nakobe Dean, I think that this is a huge pick. Now, this is another comment that I got because I put Nakobe Dean to the Titans in my last mock draft too, and I was, I heard, oh, but we have Zach Cunningham and David Long. Yeah, but Nakobe Dean is better than both of those guys, so I don't know. I don't even want to talk about that anymore. Here for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, so we're gonna go ahead and give him Zion Johnson. This is a guy that I really liked, from the beginning of this draft process, and really nothing that he's done can really change my mind on that. Which is a good thing because he's just been a very, very solid prospect for me this entire time. I know at first a lot of people had him as an early second. Now he's the first. Look, for me, this guy was always a first round pick in my mind. Now I wouldn't be shocked, if he did slip out of the first round, but really he belongs in the first round. And the Tampa Bay Buccaneers have a glaring need at guard right now because of the retirement of Ali Marpet. So Zion Johnson would be a you know, I'm actually going to say it because he's an offensive lineman, a huge replacement for him. Pun intended this time. Zion Johnson there to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Now, this is an L for the Packers because they certainly could have used either Johnson or Kenyan Green, which is why it's possible that they could take an offensive lineman then take their wide receiver second. But here, I'm going to give him Tyler Linderbaum. And I think the plan right here is you keep Linderbaum at center and move Josh Myers, who is the current center, over to guard. Royce Newman was one of the starters last year on the offensive line. He really wasn't that good. So hopefully you can get two solid players, at the position. You can really fill two needs with just this one pick by moving Myers over to guard and keeping Linderbaum at center. For the Chiefs now, this is going to be an interesting route. So first we're going to take Devonta Wyatt. Now, maybe you're saying, hey, look, the Chiefs don't need a defensive tackle. I don't care because this is the best player available. And look, if Devonta Wyatt is sitting there at 29, this is huge. You got to take it. And again, I use the word huge. I don't know what's up with me in the word huge, but again, Devonta Wyatt, this is a big dude, so I think it's appropriate for me to use the word. Let's keep moving on, okay? Now, this gives you more flexibility. I know you have a Derek Nottie and I think a Kalen Saunders in the middle, and if you want any of those guys to have play time, then sure, have Devonta Wyatt pair up with one of those guys. And look, Chris Jones proved that he can be a dominant edge rusher as well. So then move Chris Jones out to edge and have Frank Clark on the other side. This can work out if you really try to do it. And Devonta Wyatt, okay, you can't pass up on him at this point. I don't care if you don't need him. This is a damn good player. And at the end of the day, like I said, and I stress this so much, you just want good players on your team because those are the guys that are going to stick around the longest and be the most productive. Um, Here at 30, Jahan Dotson. This is my number 3 wide receiver in this year's class. Just a game wrecker, a game changer. This is a guy who's constantly open. Even if you don't like the way he gets open, you can't deny that he gets open and he makes huge plays. He does it somehow. So Jahan Dotson, just work your magic here in Kansas City. He's gonna have endless opportunities with Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid. Um, I think this would be a huge dub for the Kansas City Chiefs. Here for the Cincinnati Bengals, they've already made it a huge emphasis to protect Joe Burrow, and I just hope it's not too late because for all we know, the Bengals might not get another shot at this, but the way that they've built their offensive line, they're setting themselves up for a good repeat and winning the AFC Championship and hopefully returning to the Super Bowl. But right here, we're going to take Tyler Smith out of Tulsa. Um, Look, let's ignore the ratings because this is just their opinion. Look, Tyler Smith is a guy who I've seen getting mocked into the first round for other people, and I can agree with that. And look, this is a team that needs a guard. Jackson Carman was not good last year, even though he was a second round pick. Right now, the Bengals are trying to win right now, and they're building an offensive line to do so. Tyler Smith would be in the mix, and would be a huge addition for them in building that offensive line and protecting Joe Burrow. Finally, with our last pick, the Detroit Lions go out and get their franchise quarterback. We're going to do something a little fun here. We're going to give them Desmond Ridder out of Cincinnati. Look, it's plain and simple. The guy's a winner. He has great character. And look, it seems like a lot of teams are really high on Desmond Ridder, and his stock only went up after the combine. So I would really not be surprised if he ended up being a first round pick. Personally, I don't think he's a first round talent. But look, I'm just a guy here sitting in my room at 260 subscribers. So you don't have to listen to me if you don't want to. But right here, this is the end of our mock draft. I'm going to do a quick scroll and review Aiden Hutchinson going first, Travond Walker going second there. Then we have a run on the offensive line. Our first quarterback gets taken off the board with Kenny Pickett to the Carolina Panthers. Kayvon Thibodeau falls to 8 for the Atlanta Falcons. Kyle Hamilton drops all the way to 12 to the Minnesota Vikings. Jordan Davis, the athletic freak, goes to the Baltimore Ravens at 14. Saints trade up in the draft to go and get Matt Corral. Here, Devin Lloyd finally gets taken off of the board along with Drake London, two guys who are just getting a ton of hype at the moment and deservingly so. They go in the high 20s. Here in the late 20s, Nakobe Dean is another guy who's getting a ton of hype, playing on that star-studded Georgia defense. He's going to go to the Tennessee Titans, and then we get a small run on interior offensive linemen, starting with Kenyan Green all the way down to Tyler Linderbaum, and then closing off the draft, like I said, Desmond Ridder, the potential franchise quarterback for the Detroit Lions, using the pick that they traded Matthew Stafford away for to get their new franchise quarterback in Desmond Ridder. Thank you guys for watching Mock Draft 3.0. Again, if you like what you see, hit the like button. Leave your thoughts in the comment section below, positive or negative. I'm reading all of it, and I'm taking each and every one of those things with a grain of salt. And yeah, consider subscribing. I'll see you guys later.